Nights into Dreams was released on August 21st, 1996 in North America. That's about a month before Super Mario 64 hit the region, which was on September 26th, if I'm not mistaken. It's interesting because Nights was the very first Sega Saturn game to use the 3D control pad. It even shipped with it. You could always use the standard controller if you wanted to, but the 3D pad was actually the first stick on the market, at least for that generation, that featured an analog thumb pad. And that's interesting because the whole, N64, its whole creation, the whole point of it was because of its analog stick. So I thought that was kind of unique. And if you're looking for the precursor to the Dreamcast controller, well, that's it. I'll do a separate review for the 3D pad in another video later on. So the goal of Nights was to give the Sega Saturn an explosive 3D title to call its own. It had already been on the market for almost a year, and the N64 was getting a lot of attention because of Super Mario 64, and a lot of people already knew that the PlayStation, the original PlayStation that is, was extremely impressive at pushing polygons. So Sega needed something to say, like, hey, woohoo, don't forget about us. And I mean, obviously the Saturn was known for its 2D prowess, but they really needed something in 3D. And the answer to that was Nights into Dreams. It's interesting to look back now and just see how successful the game really was. It became a cult classic, almost like the Saturn itself. By the time Nights was released, the Saturn had already made so many, Sega had already made so many mistakes with the Saturn that really it never had the chance to become totally mainstream. Which is really sad because Nights never could live up to the expectations that Sega had put forth on it. So, now that the history lesson's over, let's jump right on in. To start off, the game features a really unique storyline, which is what you just saw in that video, although they don't really explain anything to you in the game itself. Basically, Wise Man the Wicked, he rules the nightmare portion of Dream World, Nightopia being the good one. And he wants to steal all the dark energy, the dream energy, to rule both what you consider the good and evil portions of Dream World, and then eventually take over the world. Claris and Elliot, which are two kids who have had some rough situations happen to them lately. With Claris, she had, I think it was stage fright when she auditioned for a school play, and Elliot was beaten by older kids in a basketball match. So they're both having nightmares, and it's here where they meet up with Nights, and they free Nights, who was actually created by Wise Men. And anyways, whatever, long story short, he sets forth to stop Wise Man, help the kids, and restore peace to the galaxy. Okay, maybe not quite, but you get the idea. What you're seeing here is one of the 7 different boss battles, and they're really unique. They're unlike any other boss battles in Sega games. You have to sort of figure out where the weak points are, and there's some tricks to it and what have you, but jump in on that in a bit. So the gameplay with Nights is actually really, really interesting, especially now after all these years. Nights plays more like an arcade game than anything else, where each world is broken into 4 different levels. And you'll see, as the video continues, you'll notice at the starting points it'll say 1, 2, 3, 4. I obviously have pieced together a bunch of different footage, and I'm not incredible at this game, not at all, but just to give you a better idea how it works. After all 4 levels, you take on the world's boss, which is what you just saw. And the point of each stage is to go around and gather different points. Okay, like going through all these different hoops will net me different points. And I'll also be able to get these different orbs, stars, whatever. There's tons and tons of ways for you to get scores here. And once you've acquired enough of different points, you then go to those little circular, whatever you want to call them, things. These, no, not those. The ones that are basically holding the dream energy orbs. Because the idea is you want to free the dream energy and then bring it back to the start of the level, which are those things right there. You want to destroy those and bring those back. If you'll notice now, NiGHTS has that little orb with him, which is part of the dream energy. And you're basically, you want to free it so that Wise Man can't control it. Typically you'll notice that in my videos I'm going to keep getting C's, which is fine. You can beat the game with a C, but you know, you obviously want to get an A to perfect your score. And that's why I say this is the type of game that really feels like an arcade game, because you're going to be repeatedly playing it over and over and over again to better yourself. Now, as you can tell, the graphics are pretty damn impressive, no? I was pleasantly surprised that after all these years it held up surprisingly well. On an HD TV, yeah, it does look a little rough around the edges. But back in 1996, this was extremely impressive, especially if you got to remember that this was on a system that apparently couldn't do 3D whatsoever. Well, I don't know about that. Look at this. This is quite nice. This is another boss battle you're seeing here. One of my favorite in the game, actually. It's really unique. In terms of frame rate, held up surprisingly well. Music was superb, and it's actually a fan favorite for Sega fanatics. It's really catchy, even after all these years. One aspect that hasn't aged quite as well are with the controls. The 3D pad works really well in controlling NiGHTS, getting him to do his different loops and what have you. But the character himself, he feels a little bit loose, and as you want to do loops and turns, I find he doesn't have the fluidity that you would expect. Sort of like, you know, how Mario 64 aged better, I would say. Like, as if you go back now and play that game, you'll see that it feels quite tight. With this, it does feel a little bit looser, but that's about it. I mean, after you play for a little bit of time, you'll definitely get used to it, and you'll see the way the character controls and whatever. So it's not too bad, but I mean, it's just, it doesn't have the tightness that you would find in a game made today. Looking back after 15 years, NiGHTS remains a great game though, especially to show off the power of the Sega Saturn. And it's funny how Sega stuck with their arcade roots for this game instead of creating something that felt a little more console-like, if you will. If you're looking to try NiGHTS for yourself, or you're just starting your Sega Saturn collection, fear not, because NiGHTS is one of the most successful titles ever released on the platform, and as such, it's quite easily available for relatively cheap prices. It can get up there a little bit, like it can go up to around $80 if you're going to go and pick up the 3D pad with it, because you know the way people like to price gouge, so it's a little ridiculous. I was pleasantly surprised to see just how well NiGHTS hold up, even though I did find the controls a little bit loose. If you're getting into your Saturn collection right now, this is a very easy recommend for anyone. Just remember to give it a little bit of time to get good at and to get used to. This is a classic Sega game. It requires devotion, dedication, but it is highly rewarding afterwards. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll be back soon with another video.